The movie begins with a shot of a battlefield where explosions take place. Then we see soldiers firing guns. One of them gets shot and his teammates drag him to safety. But safety is non-existent because the captain gets shot in the neck. The remaining soldier, Miles, also gets shot. Lucky for him, the wound isn't lethal. He watches the missiles fly in the sky until he sees a light come down on him. The next scene has him awakening elsewhere. The first thing he experiences is the pain from being shot. Looking around, Miles sees he is alone in a strange room. He doesn't know what to make of it. Nothing exists except for the four walls, the floor, and the ceiling. The soldier finds himself inside a cube. He puts his ear against a wall to listen to what could be behind it, but his injury brings him down in pain. His first words are him asking what this place is. He asks if this is a hospital. In case it is, he yells for a medic. Alas, no one is coming to his help. Hence, he administers first aid on himself. Moving along, he tries to contact his people on a radio. As he does, he spots a word written backward and upside down atop one wall. It is the word abandon, one of many things to add to his confusion. Miles asks if someone could just say something. He yells for anyone to do it. He even tries to speak another language, which sounds like Arabic. Soon he sees the word all has appeared near abandon. The soldier believes he's being messed with. He looks at the floor to see the message, "Save the sinner's soul," written on it. The other statement now has the word hope added to it. Thus, the complete message is, abandon all hope. Miles removes all of his gear and asks what this is. Since he's not being answered, he bangs on the wall, demanding to be released. Once a drop of his sweat falls on the floor, he watches it sizzle. He perhaps confuses this odd place for being a type of crematory, prompting him to yell he's not deceased. He tries to break through the walls by firing his handgun into them. However, this gives minimal damage to the cube. Although Miles falls on the floor and suffers, he does not burn to his demise like he feared he would. Then he collects himself before drinking water from his flask. Suddenly, the cube he's trapped in moves around, tossing him in the process. When it stops, he notices the words, "Abandon all hope," are now on the floor. Frightened, he tells himself this is a dream. He attempts to use the radio again. If anyone is listening, Miles pleads for them to say something. He almost abandons all hope, like the message instructs him, but he hears someone respond. The soldier tries talking to the person, who isn't talking anymore. So, he is brought back to his hopeless state. He thinks the cube is refracting the signal and observes the bizarre sight of some of his items being stuck to the ceiling. It is like gravity exists oddly in this structure. Miles uses binoculars to look at the number on his phone that is lying on the ceiling. He carves the number into the floor. Once the phone rings, he tries to reach it by jumping, yet he hurts himself in doing that. Therefore, he throws his shoe at it with the hope of bringing it down. Unfortunately, the weird gravity of the cube collects his shoe to the ceiling as if it were the floor. Afterward, Miles sees frost start to form on the walls, making him put his shirt on. It becomes frigid in the place very fast. He is lucky it does not claim him because the frost soon fades. He is still freezing though, and the phone rings again. This time, he gives it to the bird. Then the structure shifts a second time, shuffling him with all his items. While it does, he manages to grab the ringing phone, but it goes silent the moment he gets it. With the cube now being settled, Miles scoots to his helmet and takes out a photo from it of a little girl. She is perhaps his daughter. On its backside exists a picture of maybe his wife. Since the cube shifted, he asks what is being changed. He contacts the last person who called his phone to hear a woman talk. The amount of static coming from the other line is causing a big issue in their communication. Thankfully, the static fades, and Miles asks who he's talking to. The woman wants him to tell her who he is first, so he gives his name before getting asked where he is. He thinks the woman can see him. However, she shows she doesn't by asking him where he is. She also asks if he's coming for her. Furthermore, the woman says she has been kidnapped into a room where the temperature keeps changing. It spins around, too. At this point, Miles learns the person he's talking to is in the same type of cube he is in. The strangest phenomenon to her is that light exists in there without a visible source. Miles moves his arm around in the middle of the space and experiences an inexplicable light effect. They talk about their trap some more, prompting her to think he is responsible for it. She starts throwing profanity at him, but he calms her by saying he is trapped like her. He asks if the walls look familiar to anything she might have seen on the outside, to which she replies they look like an anchorite. Miles inquires if she is a journalist due to guessing she isn't military. She gets aggressive again and believes he's trying to get information out of her. The soldier isn't having it anymore. He yells for her to stop, in addition to him losing his life. When he calms down, he says they are both similarly trapped, hence they have to work together. Agreeing with him, the woman apologizes. She wonders why they are in these cubes. Miles thinks they have to be nearby. Regarding her question about the cubes being designed by the government, he doesn't know anything about that. Then she learns he was shot and wants to get the bullet out. The man doesn't want to lose his life in this place. He tries to take a step in solving the mystery by asking her what she was doing prior to getting kidnapped. She was on the highway, she says. The soldier informs her they were 2 miles south of the highway. Once she asks if he was stationed there, he says he never told her he was military. She tells him it was just a guess, for he talks like he is from there. If she is to trust him, the woman says he has to trust her too. With that, she reveals her name is Dame. Soon she begins to experience trouble, and Miles wants to know what is going on. He suddenly gets grabbed by an invisible force, being stuck in a very uncomfortable position. It lasts for several seconds until it releases him. If that wasn't bad enough, now he observes a wall shrinking. The wall he is leaning on also moves toward him, making the soldier scream in fear. He falls and bumps his head to lose consciousness. Regaining it, he sees the cube has become smaller. The phone rings while he panics. Dame calls him to say the structure is getting smaller with panic in her voice. Hearing him panic too, she tries to calm him. The woman is calming the male soldier, proving she is tougher. He hears her being in trouble and how she uses profanity. He learns she had to put her shoulder back in. They have to figure something out, she says, because this place is going to get smaller. It's something Miles does not want to hear. Moving along, he sees certain markings on the walls, causing him to ask Dame if she has the same ones in her cube. She sees writings from different languages. He reads something to her that she says sounds Latin. Changing the topic, she says something happened to her on a certain highway. Hearing the name of the highway, Miles says there is no highway like that. She reveals she was in Massachusetts during her kidnapping. Miles considers this impossible. Since he is in Iraq, he says both of them have to be there. It is the only way they can be speaking. Dame cannot believe she could have traveled to Iraq this fast. He remembers seeing a very bright light, which she also remembers seeing. Then he yells out to her if she can hear him through the wall, but she does not. He becomes curious about how she got his phone number and learns it was written on the ceiling. We should recall he carved it into the floor. Soon he gets an interfering call and tells Dame their connection is breaking. Thus he concludes the call to hear a man talk in a foreign language. He tells Miles it is Portuguese. Switching to English, he tells the soldier the unpleasant words that they have to lose their lives. He adds that they cannot win. Miles is of an opposing mindset. He tells the caller that won't be happening. When this call is finished, Dame phones him again. He chooses to keep the information of the Portuguese caller away from her. She thinks there has to be more to this place than their lives getting taken. If the ones who are doing this wanted them to perish, she reasons they would have already done it. Miles remembers the Portuguese man mentioning an equation and asks if she saw one in her cube. Due to him suddenly asking this, Dame asks if he knows something she does not. He lies that he doesn't know. This prompts her to remind him they are in this together. Alas, this does not get him to share the phone conversation. Dame holds the belief that the military has something to do with this, yet Miles's understanding of the military is that they are not capable of this. As they partake in small talk, he gives himself more first aid. He learns she is engaged to a man from the military, whom she has no common interests with. She calls herself more academic. Miles looks at the photo of his family and says he is not on the best of terms with his wife. Dame says she sees the Latin message he read to her. He reads another message that she reads at the same time. It makes her wonder what the point is of putting the same messages into different structures. All Miles can say is, they are being messed with. She reads a carving in Portuguese, which is dated from 2007. Some of the carvings have dates on them. Soon Dame gets the idea to ask him what year they are in. He thinks it's a weird question, but upon answering it, the woman receives a far weirder answer. He says the year is 1991, igniting her with laughter. She mentions many social media sites of the current time, and they confuse him. He asks what Twitter is. Then he begins to experience an abrasive sound that causes him to cover his ears. It supposedly made him lose consciousness because he awakens later. His phone keeps ringing and he sees the word answer carved into the wall. So, he answers the phone, telling Dame the cube has become small to the point of it being hard for him to breathe. She tells him it is their space. They are all in it at the same time, yet it's a different space-time. She wants to show him what she means by having him write something on a wall. Once he does it with his knife, he says he drew something, and she says it's the letter X. He sees the outline of a hand get drawn invisibly over his X. Now he wants to know what year she is in. She says she is from 2020, a date he can't believe. Dame says there could be hundreds or even thousands of people in the same cube they are in. Miles wonders how they are allowed to communicate from different times. She thinks it could be something involving the fourth dimension, and she loses him with such talk. He talks about a certain equation he remembers. He looked at it long enough until he saw the answer without doing the work. Dame likens him to Good Will Hunting. However, he doesn't know what that is either due to that movie being released a few years after 1991. He says he dropped out of college for family reasons. Dame says whoever is keeping them is operating on a higher trans-dimensional level. They can manipulate multiple constants, including time. What confuses her is why the beings have taken an interest in them. They are boring in comparison to what the aliens are capable of. Lying on the floor, Miles asks her what it's like in the year 2020. She says she would rather be in the 90s with him. He wonders if the future has flying cars, and learns it does not. Some of them drive themselves, though. Regarding whether they are still in the Middle East, Dame informs him thousands of troops are indeed there. We learn his father was a Vietnam veteran who got psychologically ruined by the war. Dame wants him to keep his bleeding under control. She does not want to lose him. Then he looks at his military paperwork concerning the Arabic language. He asks her if she sees such writing in the cube, and she does on the ceiling. His paperwork tells him the writing is not words, but rather math symbols. Miles starts translating the equations into English with the help of his paperwork. In the meantime, Dame tells him the equations belong to Ludwig Schlafly. The problem is that they are not complete. They are equations dealing with the fourth dimension. She thinks one of the many people trapped in the structure could have written it. There is bound to be at least one mathematician among them. Miles corrects her statement to say there are two of them, meaning her. She says he has a propensity towards math, so she corrects the statement further to say there are three of them. Soon we see the big equation he has carved into the floor. Yet for an unknown reason, he witnesses how his work begins to get scribbled. All of it becomes covered in scratch marks, which angers the man. He resorts to writing the equation on his arm. Switching the topic, Dame says he has seen terrible things. She asks if it ever gets to him. Did it ever make him hurt someone he loves? When he tells her it has, she pries into what he did, and he gets angry. He says they become animals. He asks what her fiancé did to her, a question she doesn't answer. Therefore, he stays on the topic of his family, saying his dad beat Miles's mom. He tried to stop the man from doing it, but he was only a kid. One time, his father threw him on the pull-out bed and shut it. Miles could not move or breathe. All he could do was listen. He says no one who loves someone should ever hurt them. Dame says she knows that, adding she's not stupid. Back to the equation, she thinks she can remember it. Since he asks for the time, she gives it to him. He gets scared that they have less than 1 minute. He has been timing the suppression of the cube and wants her to hurry before there is no space left. Following this, another suppression happens. We see the increased gravity taking the bullet out of Miles. Returning to normality, he sees his phone might have broken. Moreover, the cube has shrunk. He luckily gets his phone to turn on, waiting for Dame to contact him. However, he gets a call from the Portuguese man, who tells Miles an unspecified "they can't see." He also says they must fail, meaning the trapped people. Furthermore, the man says something about a sacrifice. Not liking his defeatist attitude, Miles concludes the call. Then he gets phoned by Dame, and she says she broke her arm. Once she tells him the time, he says it's getting faster. He urges her to finish the equation quickly. He believes he can solve it if she does. Surprisingly, she tells him they have to perish. Wondering why she said this, he asks if she is working with the other caller. He realizes she did and gets angry that she said nothing to him. She says the aliens are a superior species. She thinks the Portuguese man is right that they can't show the aliens something. Miles demands to know what that is. Hence she says they can't show the aliens they are capable. If they are being tested, they can't show them they are a threat. But Miles wants her to understand she already is a threat. According to him, she would not be in the cube if she weren't. Moving along, he says something about the gravity opening or unlocking in the cube. He adds it is under the people's control. They have the power to make it move. Dame begins to say that whatever the answer to the equation is. Yet Miles finishes for her by saying that is how many times they have to get the cube to move. He asks what if only one of them is supposed to escape. She guesses what if it's the one who solves the equation. Soon the light vanishes and we hear them suffer. During this time, Miles receives many disturbing images of the war, plus his bad father. He turns on a flashlight, telling the aliens they won. He wants them to finish it, since he can feel his life coming to a close. He asks his dad why he did what he did. He cries that the man broke Miles and his mom. He fears he is becoming like his dad, but he tells himself he is not like him. Afterward, he speaks to Dame, who sadly says her bad fiancé was there with her. Miles tries to comfort her by saying it was another test. She says she has many bruises because he hit her. He is the one who dislocated her shoulder, not the rotation of the cube. Then Dame complains she got kidnapped into this structure, and the single other person she got to talk to is another disgusting military person. She reminds him he admitted to being an animal. Thus she asks what he did to his wife. He claims that he did not hit her, although he regrets saying he wanted to. Dame says they are all the same before she expresses her intense hatred for him. The woman hopes for him to perish. When she ends the call, the Portuguese man contacts him. He repeats the same statements to Miles. This time, though, he says something new. He asks what happens if the mouse escapes from its maze. What he means is they can't show the aliens they are smarter than the trap they are in. The phone call concludes, and Miles starts to move the cube. At this moment, it begins to shrink again. It has shrunk to the point where he can't move anymore. Dame phones him to hear the soldier plead to her that she solved the equation. But she wants him to tell her the truth if he hit his wife. He says he did not, and could not do that. He knows there is something wrong with him. So it should be Dame who escapes the cube. Miles considers her to be the best of them. He is sorry for everything she has suffered through. He hears her crying, and she forgives him for what he is. He wants her to find his family after she gets out. He doesn't know where they will be living 29 years in the future. Yet he wishes for Dame to tell them he's sorry, plus that he loves them. Once she agrees to it, he demands that they solve the equation. Therefore, they put their minds together to do just that. Alas, something seems to be not enough. At this point, Dame firmly says the answer to the equation is 1. She believes the answer is referring to the oneness of mankind. Furthermore, she thinks the aliens want to see if they can unite. She tells him to push, which prompts him to start pushing the cube. As they both do it, we finally see Dame. Their hands nearly touch. The cube has opened for them in a strange dimensional way. Its squarish walls float around the duo individually. We also get to observe other trapped people. The friends who only knew each other through their voices get to have a brief greeting, in addition to a brief goodbye, before they return to their respective places and times. Miles wakes up on a rock, saying they did it. He walks injured in an empty area until he comes to several soldiers to see they are all staring at something. The man who escaped something inexplicable stares too, but we don't see what it is. The film ends with us knowing he is very likely looking at the aliens.